When I talk about beating the odds, I want to talk about the current situation or the landscape of college admissions. Everybody knows that it's getting tougher, and we all know why. There are a higher number of applicants, but the same number of seats. So it's become mathematically that much more difficult to be accepted to a college. So how can we beat that? How can students today, who are excited and want to go to their dream colleges across the nation, how can we beat the odds? How can we beat the competition? I'll be providing a little bit of specific example as well as some data to help you understand what you need to know. Most importantly, though, the points that I'll be making will be how to differentiate yourself and how you can be an active student. I want to start with some numbers because the numbers don't lie, and I think it's rather clear when you take a look at the numbers. I've listed some of the top colleges up here, and if you could take a look, you'll notice that the top tier colleges, we're hovering at between 5 and 7% for admissions. Right? So I'm sure most parents here want their children to go to Harvard or Stanford so we can become doctors and lawyers. I'm sure we've all heard some form of that speech. But even at schools like USC, where the acceptance rate used to be well above 20%, last year was about 17.8. Okay? As such, it might worry students, and especially parents, about what are the chances, what are the odds of my son or my daughter being accepted into the college of their dreams. Now, all of us might not be exactly drawn to these private universities. We might be a little bit more interested in something more close to home. All right, so I've posted the numbers for the UCs, and I think it's actually a little bit more evident when you take a look at the data from the UCs. I'm sure we've all heard or read articles about how they're accepting more international students and out-of-state students, and that is true, right? And you can see in the numbers. If you take a look at, for example, Berkeley or UCLA, my alma mater, you'll see that we're hovering at about, once again, 17 to 18%. When I applied to college, I think UCLA's acceptance rate was more around 33. All right, so it's about half of what it used to be. So I don't say this just to scare you. I'm going to help you understand what these numbers mean. All right. We do have a couple of schools here, Davis, Santa Cruz, and Riverside, with higher acceptance rates, okay? So if these are schools that you're interested in, maybe that gives you a little bit more hope and makes you a little bit more excited for your chances to these schools. All right, but overall, if you take a look between 2014 and 2013, you'll see a continuous, steady decline. And if you look at the numbers from 2008, they're significantly less than they used to be. All right. The bottom line here is that not much has changed at the colleges. Their admission policies are no different than they used to be. All right. It is you guys, you students, you Cupertino kids out there who are working harder and studying smarter and becoming better applicants. All right. But if that's the case, if there are more 2,400 students, if there are more 2,100 students, for example, how can colleges tell the difference? How can you differentiate yourself? And the main idea behind that, I'm sure you've heard something like, oh, you need to be a leader, you need to be in the Boy Scouts, you need to be club president, etc. All right? But more important than that, what colleges are looking for are students with a passion or a directive. All right, and I wanted to provide an example of that. Here I have some students, and I've kept them anonymous because they probably prefer to remain that way. I have student A here, who had a 4.3 GPA that was weighted, 2290 on the SAT-1, and an 800 average for his SAT-2s. Student B had the same GPA, 4.3, but a much higher SAT score, 2370, and an 800 on his SAT-2s. Student C had a 2280 and a 780 average on his SAT-2s. All right. Can anyone guess where these students got into college? Many of you would probably guess the following: that the first student got into Berkeley, that the second student got into Stanford, and the last student went to UC San Diego. Anyone have a different idea or opinion?
C went to Stanford.
Very good. We have a well-informed parent here. That is actually correct. Student C went to Stanford. The first student did go to Berkeley. Student B, however, ended up at UC San Diego. Yes, it is interesting. So I'm going to explain this a little bit and what this all really means. they were very similar academically, but where they differed mostly were their activities. The first student, student A, was FBLA president for 2 years, played football for 2 years, was in a few clubs here and there, founded a club, was leader of a club. But really, what he spent most of his time on was being FBLA president. Student B was the tech director of FBLA, had a computer science internship, which some of you students might be interested in. And once he did that for about 2 years, so he had quite a bit of experience under his belt. He also ran cross country for 4 years, so it showed that he did have some passion for cross country. Student C, though, this is where it gets interesting. Right? Student C did attend the Management and Technology Summer Institute at University of Pennsylvania, so he did have some good experience there. This was the coolest thing, though. He developed an application, and I don't want to give too much detail, but he spent about 2 years, and he didn't exactly develop it himself. He had a friend who was a developer. What he did was he sold it. And in fact, he didn't necessarily sell it, but he got people to use it, and that's what I mean by sell. In fact, he got an entire school district to use his idea, and it became implemented into their system. I believe they still use it today. And almost all of his essays were not about developing this application, but how he's able to persuade other people to use it, how it was useful, and also his vision for how applications could be used to kind of shape or mold or be implemented into school infrastructure. So very, very mature, very broad perspective on life. He didn't just say, oh, I want to study computers, I want to be a computer scientist. I want to understand how technology can improve society. He was a tech club founder, as expected of someone of this, I guess, caliber or perspective. So once again, very into computer science, not much development knowledge, but he knew how to talk to people, and he knew how to share that passion with other people. All right, so the thing I want you to take away from this is, of course, I'm not saying that you have to get a lower SAT score to get into Stanford. Right? In fact, for Cupertino students, you probably do want to have as high of an SAT score, as high of a GPA as possible. All right? But it's not just what you do in the classroom. In fact, it's mostly what you do outside of the classroom. Right? So for the UC question, the second essay question really gives students a direct chance to think or learn about what it takes to be who you are and how that makes you proud. So I have an example, and this is actually student B that I showed earlier that ended up at UC San Diego, just for some background. But the student, as I mentioned earlier, was a member of FBLA, and he chose to talk about FBLA as his passion. So this is his first sentence. My assimilation into high school was marked by conformity. I joined clubs for their popularity. All right. I've highlighted some of the words here. My assimilation, marked in conformity. You could just say, I'm a pretty normal kid. That's more or less what he's saying. But his word choice shows that he's taking some time to think about it, to consider how he's going to phrase this. He didn't speak like this normally, but when he took some time to think about it and write it out, this was what he came up with. Eventually, we led to the idea of, furthermore, the venture out of my comfort zone, excuse me, out of my comfort zone has brought me numerous growths, from better communication, presentation, networking skills, to exercising better initiative, prioritization, and persistence. Right? He could have just said, I work harder now. I'm a better person. In a way, that's what he's saying. All right? But he's chosen these very specific words to highlight the type of growth that he has experienced. So this is a rather straightforward question from the UC application. For the common application, the one that is used by most private schools, it'll be a little bit more. To finish off, I just wanted to leave everybody with the idea that for most students, you probably don't have a passion yet. That's okay. Right? But what you need to do is you need to develop one. You need to create something. You need to have something that you care about, and you have something that you like to do. If you do have a passion, you want to make sure that you share it. Okay? So if you secretly like something, no one cares. No one knows. Right? You have to make sure that everyone knows. You have to make sure that everyone is able to kind of share in that passion with you. Lastly, the way that you're actually going to beat the odds, all right, will not be your grades or your test scores. All right? They'll just put you in a place to beat the odds. You have to show colleges, of course your parents, but most importantly, I want to challenge you all to show yourselves what you're made of so that you can beat the odds. Thank you.